As I explained in the last episode, the movies that I have chosen for this month are all based on Stephen King novels, or novellas, or short story. I mean, novella is technically a short story, but yeah. So, the last movie we did was Needful Things, which we all seem to enjoy pretty much and had some interesting takes on. This movie, however, a little bit different. So again, I didn't choose the greatest Stephen King adaptations or the most well-known Stephen King adaptations, or even, the ones that I like the most. I chose the ones that I remember the most from my early days. And this is one of them. And not necessarily the plot or even the characters really, but just a bunch of visuals from this movie really stuck out for me from the first time that I saw it. And so I wanted to revisit it, and we did. And now we're going to jump right into the discussion, I guess. So the movie we're doing is Dreamcatcher, starring a bunch of people. Thomas Jane, Timothy Olyphant, and Morgan Freeman are probably the three most recognizable to normal people. And then you got like Jason Lee and who else is it? I can't remember the name of the bearded dude who turns British halfway through the movie. He's British in real life. Anyway.
Yeah, he's from Billions.
That's not what I know him from, but yeah, he's from a lot of stuff. I've seen him in lots of things. I'm pretty sure he played like a British soldier in some like melodrama or something at some point.
Was he in CSI?
No,
I think you're thinking of Horatio.
That's not Horatio.
Horatio Kane. But let's move right into first viewings, I suppose. I'll start with you, Kaylin. When's the first time that you saw Dreamcatcher? The movie.
I'm having technical difficulties.
Seems like you both are. What are you having technical difficulties on? And Jason?
I'm hearing sound out of my phone, and it's driving me to drink.
Oh. I mean, we didn't really do our test. We just kind of went right from like stream to stream.
That's true. I assume it's fine. Brian, can you tell me if on the stream you can hear like an echo? Brian just entered. I think it's fine though.
You're talking about Instagram, or are you talking about the Twitch?
So my headphones are plugged in and they're on, right? And that usually
perfect. I'm back.
Cool. That usually mitigates the sound, but I'm still getting a little bit of sound out of my phone.
But do you know which stream it's coming from is what I'm asking you.
Oh.
Instagram?
It would be Instagram.
Okay, so I'm not hearing any echo from Instagram because I have Instagram in my ear right now. So that I can hear both, yeah.
So I wonder, okay, cool. Brian, can you go over to our Twitch and check our Twitch stream and see if there's an echo there? Thanks. You're our de facto producer.
We're gonna start paying our viewers.
Yeah. I guess you've become our moderator.
Yeah, he's our de facto producer moderator for tonight.
Thank you. Love seeing your name pop up.
Me as well.
I also have the Twitch up as well, so I can just look at that. And I don't hear any echo.
Okay, it's just in my room. So as long as my microphone isn't picking it up, it's fine. Yeah. Okay. We have two viewers over.
Jason just like he's just in a larger room this week and he's hearing an echo. There's an echo in here.
No, I've got a space alien in my brain and I'm hearing a voice and it's talking to me.
Better be careful, it's gonna explode out of your butt.
Yeah.
All right.
For those of you that don't know, and Brian is asking, if you want to check us out on Twitch, you can go to twitch.tv/ Hey, did you see this one? Twitch.tv/ Hey.
Is there a comma or a question mark in it?
Nope. All one word, all lowercase. Lowercase doesn't matter in URLs, but there you go.
Okay.
Okay.
So
we're back.
Now that we're back and we've decided to be good at our jobs, Kaylin, how about you go first and tell us the first time that you saw the movie Dreamcatcher?
The first time I saw this movie was 2 weeks ago.
Oh, you mean when we were originally going to talk about it and then had to push it? Okay, that's 2 for 2 you haven't seen then.
Yeah, so I think I messaged you when I said something along the lines of that's not what I was expecting from the movie or whatever. And we'll get into more detail as we get in. But yeah, I saw this movie for the first time, not this past weekend, but the weekend before, and then did a second viewing to kind of like nitpick and make like the first. I like doing one fresh viewing where I'm not trying to like make notes of anything. I'm just enjoying the ride. And then I go back and reassess and whatever. And then sometimes I do a third viewing the day of just to freshen it up again in my mind. I get impressed with how well you guys seem to be able to talk about the movies that we do. And from what I can tell, only watch it once.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if I can understand why you do that. And like, I'll do that for some movies, but not all of them.
Really want to,
yeah. And, you know, like,
I'm a loser
if you take notes during your
first.
first viewing, you should be okay to talk about it. But like, you will miss a couple things here and there, especially if you're taking pretty extensive notes.
Yeah.
That's why what I tried
viewing. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I would just say that's why what I try to do now is I try to take only notes about my thoughts, and I don't so much. I used to like write like everything, like every scene. And now I just try to take notes about my thoughts, because if I take notes of every scene, I just fucking get lost in the scene and I lose what's going on. So now I would prefer to be able to do this without taking any notes. And that's the way that I view the movie. Unfortunately, a lot of times I'll watch, like today I watched the movie like right before the podcast. So it's fresh in my head. But sometimes I watch it a couple days before. And by the time we get to the podcast, it's like a faded, distant memory, right? So.
Yeah.
Right.
No, yeah, I think either way is fine. If you got to watch it 3 times to be able to have a good discussion, or if you just need to watch it once right beforehand. Technically, for what I usually do is I'll watch it within the week that we're going to talk about it, and I'll, instead of taking extensive notes, I'll just write down like jot notes of like, we should talk about this or we should talk about that, rather than being like, this is how I feel about this scene and why. Like just like little jot notes here and there, being like for example, Morgan Freeman's eyebrows are out of this world.
I was gonna call that out. Those gotta
almost
be fake,
literally. Right? What?
They got to be fake, right? Like they're like not prosthetic.
I
like...
would hope. I mean, maybe he just has really long ones that he combs normally, like to the sides, and he
like
just
added some like gel or.
They're like, hold on, Morgan. Do you know that your eyebrows can do this? We're doing this for the movie.
I think it's an eyebrow weave. I think that's what it was.
Is that racist?
No, why would that be racist?
I don't know. Why does it have to be a weave?
Because a weave is just when you tie hair into your hair.
Yeah, it doesn't have anything to do with race.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
It's just a type of hair like you
hair extension.
You basically like tie them together. Yeah.
This is supposed to be a lot more fun and fancy free than it came out as.
Okay.
Yeah, you just accused me of being racist.
So you had to get educated on what a weave is. All right, Jason or Kaylin, do you have any more first impressions or?
So I saw the movie for the first time the other week. I don't think I've read any of Stephen King's books. I feel like this one might be one that I like better as the book than the movie.
This one's very long. It's like 700 pages, I think.
Interesting.
Yeah.
When the alien shows up at the bathroom, I almost like out loud like said, "Oh, aliens!" Like that guy. I think he's Greek. The guy with the hair from the History Channel, where everything's aliens to him.
Yeah, when he goes like this.
Yeah. Aliens.
Yeah.
I was
he like slowly looks more and more like a Vegas magician as the seasons go on.
His hair
gets
wild.
crazier, his clothes get fancier, and he gets more tan.
He dresses like one in real life, and have you seen those comparison photos of him progressing over time? Because that's real.
Yeah,
that's funny.
And then there's the guy who wrote Fires of the Gods. He's like in that show a lot too, and like the first season he has like white hair because he's an old man, and then the second season he has jet black hair. It's like Creed in The Office when he dyes his hair black.
What's that, fellow young people?
Yeah. He's like
What are we
drinking
talking
Red Bull. We're gonna get why don't these things have Red Bull?
Oh, maybe Red Bull will sponsor us. That way we'll be energized for our viewers.
Yeah. So you were one of those guys that was like, oh God, it's aliens, isn't it?
Well,
so you had no idea that it was aliens then, like going in.
No, like no. And so actually, this brings me to, and maybe I'll save it for later. But we were talking. We were in the group chat about movie trailers, and so this movie as well as the last movie, Needful Things, like knew nothing about them, never seen a trailer or anything, and I actually kind of liked going into these movies fresh, that much more. It did kind of feel like a cop out though. Sort of like I don't know, for some reason I kind of felt it was more supernatural than just aliens.
Okay. I mean, I can understand that perspective if you're expecting witches or ghosts, or because there is a lot of like indigenous tropey sort of iconography at the beginning of the movie that you're like, oh, is this going to be another one of Stephen King's ventures into appropriation, if you will. He likes to use the symbolism and the visual expression and like lore of indigenous North Americans a lot in a lot of his work, but like even off the top of your head, you could probably think of like 3 or 4 just being like, oh yeah, The Shining.
Dinner.
There was a few references.
Yeah.
It reminded me of never mind. So we're not about references. Say that later.
Pet Cemetery. And Pet Cemetery too.
Yeah. This pet cemetery was buried on an ancient native pet cemetery.
I think Cujo had some stuff too.
Ancestry? Is that what you're saying?
No, I thought that had to do with like an Indian burial ground as well.
I've never actually seen Cujo, and I bought like an 8-pack of Stephen King movies yesterday, and Cujo's in there, so I might have to.
I'll spoil a little bit for you. It's like 40 minutes of a girl and her son in a car, and the car is getting attacked by Cujo. It's a really fucking weird movie.
I mean, I just watched Thinner, and that was fucking weird as hell too. So, also very gross at the beginning. It's just like lots of really gross visual stuff. Anyway, Kaylin, any other things that you'd like to add, or are we good?
No, we're good.
All right, Jason, let's move on to you. What was your first experience with Dreamcatcher?
I don't believe this movie wasn't really on my radar recently, but watching it, I remember the movie now, and I remember when it came out. It being one of those situations where it was like the new Stephen King, and we're in like a pre M. Night Shyamalan world at this point. It's 2003. The book was written in 2001.
It was pretty quick, right? Like, is that normal? That seems kind of quick.
For a while there. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say our last movie was the same thing. It was written in like 91, and the movie came out in 93. Sometimes I think Stephen King writes books that he's like, this is gonna be a TV show, or it's gonna be a thing. And sometimes he writes books that are like legend.
Give me the money.
Yeah, he's also like he's a proven entity in terms of writing. So like anytime a new Stephen King book is announced, he's already being approached by like movie production companies being like, can we buy the rights to this book before the book is even out?
It's kind of like how in comic books now, a comic book run will come out and you can almost guarantee that like the big movie event will take place with elements from that comic run. Where in the old days they wrote comic books thinking this will never get turned into anything, this will just be a comic book. And you see little bits of that in superhero movies. But now, like for instance, the whole Wanda shit from Multiverse of Madness and her TV show is basically the House of M story, which is an early mid-2000s story about Wanda that kind of made her into more of a multi-dimensional character, where before she was like, I do red magic. And I think Stephen King kind of had the same thing, where he probably wrote books all through the 80s, and then it was a proven success as a TV miniseries, and then he started just churning out the hits in movie form. But as far as this movie goes,
I mean, Stephen King movies have been made since the 70s. Like they've continuously been made up until like
right. Sorry,
recently.
I was probably a decade off. You get what my mean.
No, I know, but what I'm saying is that he's still like there's a million TV shows that came out during COVID that were like all based on Stephen King stuff. It's just like he's always been making things. So anytime he writes anything, someone is approaching him being like, buy the rights so we can potentially make this into something.
And it really sucks that the results may vary on the product. Like this, I could imagine being a pretty dope book, even though he has gone on record as saying he hates it. I'll get into that when we get into the body of the episode. I read a little bit about this book, but so as far as I remember when this movie came out, and it's pre M. Night Shyamalan, and I remember the movie coming out, everybody thinking it was going to be one of the, like you said, the iconography of like Native American stuff. The name is Dreamcatcher. You think it's going to be like these friends go to the woods. These friends go to the woods and they're going to get spooked on by a witch. Yeah. No, I remember getting spoiled on the fact that it's aliens all along. And as I was watching it, I was like, oh, is this that movie? This like before M. Night Shyamalan movies, it had like a big twist. And that was, it basically jogged my memory. What I didn't know is that this movie is fucking buck wild from the get-go. It's all over the place.
It is all over the place.
It kind of plays like a combination of Stand By Me, It, and
The Thing.
The Thing. I was gonna say this is Stephen King's The Thing almost.
Yeah.
And except it doesn't go into the psychological stuff as much. But then it's like also Stephen King's take on a superhero movie. Because they kind of all have like sort of individual little powers, but it's more revealed that it's all kind of one group, a collective unconscious situation. But like,
hive mind.
It was a neat story, but I could feel it was palpable watching the movie when they were skipping over stuff to get to the next big plot point. Because to jam such a broad story into 2 hours, it also had felt like The Mist a little bit too. Yeah, you know. Except The Mist, it had the opposite ending to The Mist, where the shit just keeps going in The Mist. Where they end it before
Spoiler
the
alert.
Can get out. Spoilers. But yeah, I enjoyed this movie honestly, but it's not a great movie, and the dialogue in this movie is fucking hilarious. And if the dialogue is as bad in the movie as it is in the book as it is in the movie, then I take back everything. I might have to actually read this book or part of it to see how they compare.
Yeah. I've not read the book, but I assume like a lot of Stephen King stuff that's adapted has like some real chunky dialogue where you're like, nobody talks like this. But like, at the same time, you're watching a movie about like butt aliens and stuff. So it's like, I'm okay with them saying weird stuff.
But everybody in this movie talks like this to each other. And then when they're having like at the beginning, when they're like sitting around the table, it feels so like they got it in one shot. It feels so like all of these actors would go on to be pretty decent actors, right? Like, they're basically they're 4 TV actors and Thomas Jane and I guess Timothy
Oliphant. What's that guy's name? I thought his name was Josh Jamal or whatever, but he's that other guy.
No, Timothy Oliphant and Josh Jamal look the same, and I get Thomas Jane mixed up with them. And me and Madison, my wife, have jokes about how those three, Timothy Oliphant and Josh Jamal kind of look the same. But I would lump Thomas Jane in with those two, and then Jason.
He was a good Raiden. Oh, Jason Lee.
Jason Lee was great in this movie. He was the wisecracking Stephen King character that he has in every movie, and
the foul-mouthed stoner.
Yeah, basically, he's like Bill Hader's character in the It remake too. Like, I wear glasses, and that's like 70% of my
my personality is glasses.
And I did enjoy his performance, but it was funny because right at the beginning, when he's like in the city still and he's like on the phone, he's in like a phone booth, and he looks exactly like Ryan Reynolds. It's fucking it was really, Deadpool.
Jason Lee
with the glasses on, he looked he looked a lot like Ryan Reynolds. I thought that was interesting. And what I realized is all white dudes look the same to me. I think. Yep. At the end of the day,
look at you guys. You both have glasses.
I mean, people have thought me and Kaylin were brothers before, so.
That's just because we both have beards and long hair.
Yeah, it's true, and we have like dark hair and olive complexion.
Yeah. Over a couple of crazy guys.
Oh, crazy girl.
Crazy guys.
All right.
Crazy girl.
You're crazy.
Yeah, quick question. Is there more to that shirt that I can't see, Steven?
The drips go down lower, way lower.
Do they go all the way? Do they go all the way
Yeah.
to your alien ass monster?
Do the drips match the drapes?
Did the drapes match the drapes?
So yes, very good. I guess so. You both hadn't seen it, but Jason, you were at least aware of it when you first heard of it. Or did you say you saw it when you were a kid?
I didn't see it. I would have been like 18 when it came out. I didn't see it, but I remember it being a big deal because it had a big twist. It was an alien movie. It was a movie that was revealed to be aliens. Like,
yeah, that's what it was. Yeah,
in the second act. And they promoted it like it was the new Stephen King movie. It's going to be gory. It's going to be spooky. There's going to be references to Castle Rock and Derry. There's going to be other things that Stephen King likes to do. And then
I don't remember that being in the advertising, but I was very affected by the advertising when I was a kid, which is why I saw it in theaters.
Oh.
Yeah.
You saw this in theaters. Oh, what
I saw this in theaters. This is when I first started getting into horror movies in a big way. Up until, I was in middle school, I was terrified of everything. And then when I was in the 7th grade, I saw The Exorcist. When I was in the 8th grade, I saw The Shining. And then I realized they can scare me for real. And then I started watching them to try and desensitize myself. And all it did was make me like really, really like horror movies. So I started seeing every horror movie that would come out.
When did you realize that? Or no, maybe I'm saying this wrong. Was it scary because you thought it was going to happen to you, kind of thing, or something? Or?
No, you can experience fear without thinking that you're going to be murdered. You just are scared of what you're experiencing.
My fear of horror movies was the fear of the unknown. And then you desensitize yourself to horror, I think, by like seeing a bunch and knowing that it can only really be this bad. And it's really just pictures. So it was The Walking Dead that did it for me in a similar way, where when I first started watching The Walking Dead, I was still like terrified of horror, but the show was so gripping that I needed to see what happened next. And through that, you get little bits and you get slowly desensitized. And even going into this movie, I was still kind of dreading like, oh, it's a Stephen King movie I don't know much about. There might be a thing I don't like, but then it was some pretty gross stuff, but then it was like the special effects were pretty good. So I was kind of marveling at how this dumb movie was able to like do some cool things. Like the CGI holds up really well, surprisingly, for a 2003 like B movie.
Well, they did a good job of because they use practical effects as well. So it's like you're getting the CGI, but it's paired with when he's being attacked by the eel thing. He's holding a rubber thing, so you're able to kind of like separate the CG from the reality, and then you also like they're never really like. There's one shot where Jason Lee and this thing are right, like looking at each other, and they're just a little bit. The eye lines are slightly off, and it's the CGI because I guess they wanted the teeth and stuff, and it just for that one moment you're like, ugh, but it still looks okay, but they just didn't really match it up properly.
Something I thought looked really good though is when the shadows cast over the guy from Billions and he turns around and they reveal the main Mr. Gray and the thing like goes up his leg and like goes around his body. I thought like it still looked pretty cheese, but like that would be fine today, I think.
Yeah, no, it looks great. Like it's not just passable, you can compare it to stuff from the same period of time where just CGI was just still finding its legs and it was horrible. And I think like Lawrence Kasdan wrote Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. Like he is in with ILM and like with the like highest tier.
Oh, that's
CGI,
the director, right? I wrote
the
his
director
name
of this movie is like
to...
very much in the pocket of like I know the best people in the business in terms of visual effects. So like I don't think that he was even ever worried about like this is gonna look bad because he could just be like, well, we'll just work on it till it looks better.
But that's weird because I don't know if you guys have caught Halo, and the aliens in Halo look worse than this
The video game?
Halo, the TV show on Paramount Plus.
In my opinion, the aliens in the new Halo TV show look worse than the single alien in this. Now, the aliens in the wide shot when Morgan Freeman's just like killing all of them, they looked awful. And they did that weird. There was a weird like you kind of fog everything out effect that they used to do a lot in the early 2000s to show big, like Lord of the Rings has a bit of it too, where you just show these wide CGI shots, but you kind of just put this weird like kind of haze over it so you can hide.
Yeah,
that looked bad, but the alien spaceship looked cool, you know.
Yeah,
tit for tat, if you will.
So sorry, just to get back to the first time I watched this movie was in high school, and I remember I used to every Friday go to appletrailers.com and watch all the new trailers that were.
Where would you do that?
Movies on my computer.
Okay.
Where would you do that? The library?
I don't know. Maybe you're sneaking to like a school computer or something.
Oh yeah. I mean,
no, I would do it at home.
2003. I mean, I probably did more interneting on school computers.
That's what I'm saying.
No, I did it at home on my computer at home. And me and a couple of friends would sit down and watch all the trailers, and we saw the trailer for this movie, and I was like, we gotta see this. And they were all like, it looks too scary. And I was like, no, it looks perfectly scary. It looks like the perfect amount of scary. But I remember the trailer freaked me out because, again, it was Stephen King. It's going to be a horror movie. So I'm like, this is going to be a scary movie. And they really only showed the part where they break into the bathroom and the guy's on the toilet, and they just show they show like these tiny little bits of it. And I still remember watching the trailer being like, oh my God, and getting like this kind of sinking feeling, being like, this is going to be the most terrifying movie we've ever fucking seen. And then we went to go see it, and it like right up until that moment, it's just farts and farts and farts. And you're like, wait a minute, this is kind of funny. And then the blood on the floor, and you're like, oh my God, this is scary. This is going to be scary. They open it, and then the guy falls and you see his butt, and you're like, oh, this is disgusting. But then they're interlacing these humorous moments, pieces of dialogue, where it almost feels closer to like a Scream type of horror movie than, The Shining or something, like it's not like bending your mind psychologically. It's just like fart jokes and visual gags on top of scary tension that is kind of diffused by what's happening. And so like, I remember leaving the movie, and I didn't really realize it was aliens either until they get really into it. And like, Morgan Freeman starts being like, I've been killing aliens for 25 years. It's like, this man's lost his mind from hunting aliens. And I was like, okay, aliens, cool. And for me, like halfway through the movie, when all the stuff in the cabin and all the snow stuff is gone, I only really liked the moments with Mr. Gray and Jonesy. Like, I was very into that for some reason, where I'm like, I like the fun nature of the I like the fun nature of the memory warehouse, and I like that he's one actor going back and forth. And I like that actor looks like he's having a lot of fun doing that. And I just didn't really care too much about the psychological breakdown of Morgan Freeman's character, and everything after that. It's like it gets very actiony, right? One thing I will say is,
I think Morgan Freeman knew what movie he was in this. With this
for sure. I'm pretty sure he did as well. Like when he's like, if you're gonna ask yourselves what kind of monster would kill those complaining boys down there, well, I'm that kind of monster. I'm that monster, and I'm here to kick some ass. And
just it's like, whoa,
shit up. You're like, oh my
Stephen
God,
King movie.
Yeah. But like I will say that for as bad as this movie is, after a certain point, your attention is still held, and it's still compelling enough to want to get to the end of the journey, where you're like, I am invested enough now that I'm gonna watch every last second of this movie to see what happens, even though you don't really know what the alien's plan is right until he gets there. You're like, oh, that's his plan. Okay.
Well, Morgan Freeman said he had that line about like they wouldn't go to a place that they wouldn't want to have as home. I think he said they wouldn't want as home.
Yeah, but you don't really know about the water plant and all that stuff until Duddits shows up.
Gotcha. And I think that's probably things that would have been more fleshed out in the book, would be my guess. Oh, yeah. I told you guys about watching the 3-hour cut of Evil Things, right? So much better.
I think maybe this movie needs a 3-hour cut.
I think it
Well,
does too.
I mean, like the last movie, this movie would probably also benefit from a miniseries, like a 6-episode miniseries. You know?
For sure.
It's like the best Stephen King movies are the ones that are based on his short stories and novellas because it's a condensed amount of material in a very
good point.
You know, you can translate that into a screenplay relatively easily. One thing that I read about this movie is that Lawrence Kasdan, when he was readapting the original screenplay that was written for this, he wanted to take all the crazy elements of the book. He's like, I don't care what we do. I just want to put every crazy ass thing in this book into this movie. So that's why it seems like there's so many things happening, is because he took all the crazy shit. It was like, no, we gotta have that. We gotta have that. We gotta have
it
that.
did feel like a little, it didn't know its identity or something, almost like it was trying to do too much, sort of.
They wanted a lot of body horror in the movie, I think, and it wasn't a body horror movie. But I do feel like the scene with the dude on the toilet, it was too specific to not be directly out of the book. You know, like that whole bit with. It's also very Stephen King, that weird pseudo horror that he does, to have Jason Lee sitting and be obsessed with his little toothpicks and drop his toothpicks, and then like that's why he leans forward and ultimately gets like pushed off. Like it's very. The other thing was like when the high school bully is like trying to shove dog shit in Doug's face. That's a very like Stephen King, like it's not scary, but it makes you filled with the dread of like the grossness of it. Another thing from Needful Things that I brought up last week or 2 weeks ago was when Wilma gets home and the shit is all over her like wash, like her sheets,
laundry or whatever.
And she's getting like the camera cuts were done in such a way that she was like getting like riddled by like loose shit, and it felt like really unsettling in a weird like Stephen King-y way. And if you watch the It movie, the new It movies, they're filled with the weird. This isn't scary, but that's just a naked woman or naked old woman kind of poking her head from around a corner. That's not objectively scary, but it's super unsettling. Like it's super like, ooh, I don't feel good witnessing that, but I also get that, you know, horror thrill. I like those little horror thrills that you get from the more mundane, like icky stuff. And body horror movies, like Hellraiser, for instance, they have that in spades.
I think that's one thing that Stephen King would probably agree with you on, is like you can take something that's mundane and you can turn it into something of discomfort just if you describe it in the right way. And I would agree as well. I think it's easy to take something that is completely normal and make it unsettling if you just change it slightly.
It's letting your imagination wander, you know. And Stephen King's books, from what I understand, are very much like you're in that he sucks you in a way that makes your mind wander. He can make you afraid of the mundane. And I think that the reason why we relate to that and it translates to the screen so well is because we live in our lives like that. Like, you know, I don't know if you guys are like, I'm not like afraid of the dark, but like there is a certain feeling I get when when I turn all the lights off to go to bed at night and I'm walking from the living room upstairs and I catch a glimpse of like a dark room because you have a spare room and you just catch a glimpse and then your mind starts to wander and you know nothing's there, and you know you're not like, it's not fear, you're not scared, it's not fear, but there is a certain like, it's almost like a curiosity,
cautious curiosity.
Yeah, and I think Stephen King's able to, in movie form at least, is able to it translates to film very well.
Yeah, I think there's a reason why his books sell so well and his movies have continued to be made until this year. There's still more Stephen King stuff coming out like the next year, this year. This is going to be forever until even if he dies, he's got so many books that they continue making movies out of his stuff forever.
And I think Lovecraft was the originator of that sort of. His are a little bit more wild and more opium fueled. And he was a shitty person, but like, you know, they always have that fear of the unknown. But Color Out of Space is one that I think of all the time, especially while we're watching these movies this month, and that movie was so fucking whack, and it wasn't objectively scary, but like the body horror in that movie is fucking crazy. And also just like when they show aliens that you've never when you see an alien that you've never seen before in a sci-fi movie, and it looks like too good or too realistic, and it unsettles you in that certain way. Chef's kiss. And this did that for me, because even though it was basically, we were watching Frost Tremors for the first half of the movie, especially that one scene where the dude just like Timothy Olyphant just drunk ranting to the dead woman, and we just see the like thing
Carol circles back. Oh, the yeah.
I was like, oh, this is just Frost Tremors. Which is another movie that I thought of. There was almost a pastiche of like of a bunch of different good genres of horror to create a pretty mediocre movie as a whole. But like, I would probably watch this again. I'd like to watch this live with you guys, like in a room, put this on and just like make fun of it. But
did it bite his penis off?
Yeah, it's a good like reactionary movie because so many crazy things happen. Like, and it's like the kind of movie you can yell at the screen for. Like, I wanted to call their gang, like the four of them, like the Butterfinger Boys, because they always drop shit at the worst possible time.
When they did the matches, and then I thought it was for some reason I was connecting it to the toothpicks and thought it was trying to tell me something, but then like nothing, like no one else.
No, there's not really any other than that they both dropped something at like the exact worst moment for them to do it. There's not really any kind of.
It was more so that Thomas Jane's character Henry like fucking sucks under pressure, and it happens at the end of the movie too, where he's like he has a gun in the fucking eel's mouth, and his finger just won't go into the trigger, like that like. He was battling like 6 tiny alien worms, and he couldn't.
I took that more as that like he's never used a gun before, because when he's trying.
But what about at his office?
That's exactly what I'm about to say. Remember when he's trying to uncock the gun and accidentally shoots the wall? Yeah, he's never used a fucking gun before. He doesn't know.
Where's his office? How come no one said anything about that?
We don't know.
It's in his house.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, that could.
Also, it's a movie.
There you go. Yeah,
I can
that's the answer. It's his
my
house.
disbelief for a lot. Like I can bring up a lot of things for movies and pick over them, but I can suspend my disbelief for the fact that he, in the United States, accidentally unloaded a gun in his own home, because I'm sure it happens constantly.
Yeah, you walk through a neighborhood in, I don't know, Texas, and it's just like every 5 seconds someone's accidentally shooting a gun and nobody says anything about it.
I have a weird thing that I want to bring up before I forget. I
love weird things.
Duddits, his love for Scooby-Doo kind of made me think that this was a weird, like, the 4 kids were the, Scooby-Doo crew, and he was Scooby-Doo, because even his speech impediment was similar to the way that Scooby talks.
Yeah,
and he might have himself always perceived the group as that, and that's why he loved. But I guess he had the lunchbox before.
So was the Duddits was an alien or whatever, right? Or a human taken over by an alien. Now that I'm saying this out loud. So was it a human taken over by an alien?
Yeah, it was the same deal as
and Jonesy. So does the alien the alien was not?
I don't know. I think that kid had learning he must have developmental issues from the get-go, because his parents didn't be like.
But why couldn't the alien make him not like that, or is the alien constricted or whatever by what the physical limitations of the body?
This is all shit. I was literally sitting there thinking, like, why there was a lot of whys for that element of it.
Why the English accent? Where did he get that from?
Yeah, why was it so foppish?
He chose it because it's the most evil. He went through his archive of memories, and he was like, "This is the evilest accent. I'll choose this one."
I like it.
It could also just be that, like, literally when he takes over Jones, it could be that that's literally what Jones is thinking he sounds like, It's like, oh, he's an evil bad guy. He sounds like an evil British Empire Strikes Back villain in my head, and that's what comes out.
How come Jonesy still has a limp in his Imaginarium?
Because that's his end. That's him. And also, they keep talking about how something happened to him when he like died, like briefly when he got hit by the car. So, in his subconscious, his version of himself is probably changed by the event in his life.
Gotcha.
The fucking the Imaginarium bit kind of was the most confusing to me.
Or memory, I forget what it was.
The memory.
It's just
warehouse.
a fun way of conveying an idea, which is
visualizing like
we could have him pulling an Evil Dead where he's just punching himself in the face in the cabin for 45 minutes, or we have like a fun chase through a warehouse that isn't real.
The reason why it affected me so much is because the way I interpreted it is that the mind warehouse was almost a superpower, to the effect that he could go and recall any memory he's ever had as long as he's seen it. And they kind of hinted that that was going to be a thing at the beginning, where he's watching himself watch the group sit at the table. But it was more of a foreshadow for like how he would be trapped in that mind prison versus how that mind warehouse versus how that mind warehouse would be a power, if that makes sense. I think that's another thing that might be conveyed better in the books. It seems much more literary to have a mind like.
It's something that doesn't necessarily
a mind.
It's not something that necessarily
warehouse.
translates well visually, but I think, again, like I said, it's a fun thing, right? Like it's part of the fun of the movie.
I liked it.
I liked it too.
I thought it was cool. It was an interesting thing.
Like I think, like, there's not really a way to say like this is the mechanics of why it works this way, because it doesn't work, and it's not a thing that is going to ever work properly. But this, for what they had to accomplish in terms of like having somebody watch the outside world from within their own mind, other than it having be through the eyes of Mr. Grey the whole time, it's more interesting to have him be able to react to things like that, right?
They're setting it up early in the movie as a more fun thing that the other friends are aware of, that's how he sort of processes.
Yeah, and I mean, you could even break it down to like, some people have extremely visual imaginations, and they're able to imagine, like I can imagine us all in our own individual spaces right now, looking at each other from different angles. Like I can imagine what Kalen is looking at his computer right now, very visually. So I don't necessarily need to see it to know what it looks like. I can approximate
you don't know
what it
this.
looks like.
Oh yeah, maybe.
I said approximate. I didn't say exactly.
It also reminds me of how recently on the internet there was that sort of meme, or not meme, but like sort of new knowledge that everybody learns at the same time, that some people in their heads have a constant like monologue, which I do. My mind is always, I'm talking to myself. And
you guys don't talk to yourselves?
No, I do. That's what I'm saying. But some people, they have nothing going on inside their head. When they're doing a task, they're just
people don't talk to themselves.
They don't have some people inside their head don't have the running commentary.
Interesting.
Yeah, and some people literally cannot visualize things. They don't have a mind's eye. They can't see things in their head when they try and like. If I say, Kalen, imagine you're on a beach right now, you can literally imagine a beach in front of you. There are people that can't do that.
There's a very good episode. There's a very good episode of Jason's show where I actually make Kalen use his imagination, and in my headcanon, that's the day he learned how to use his imagination. So go and check that out. It's at Spider Hero on YouTube.
I think it was season 2. Was it season 2?
20 years old. It's filmed in 1999.
No. It was filmed in like 2008, but yeah, it's almost 20 years old. Fuck.
Yeah,
good one. I have that.
Well, I wrote down Memory Warehouse is fun. So we've discussed the Memory Warehouse. I just broke my pencil.
Side note: I'm realizing that if I was to log into this Zoom call with another screen, like we were, or just share my screen, we could be playing like trailers and stuff, because I'm pretty sure those are free use.
Nice.
For future reference, if we want to have a segment where we're like, let's watch the trailer for the show, we're allowed to play trailers on Twitch.
Can I complain about top billing again?
You can do whatever you want, man. It's our show. It's Hey, Did You See This One starring Jason.
Are you going to complain that Morgan Freeman has top billing?
And Friends.
Da 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 da.
I'm here all week. I wasn't here last week because guess what? I'm going to reveal this to the internet and all of you now. I had COVID-19. I got it.
You had the 19th COVID?
For some reason, I don't know. That made me think of 2019 for some reason. I don't know why.
That's what the 19 and 2019 is.
What about COVID though?
That's what the 19 and COVID-19 is. It means 20 because 2019 is when they discovered it.
God.
I thought it was 2020.
No, it's been around since
It
November
was discovered
2019.
in 1999.
I thought that was a conspiracy thing.
No, it's not a conspiracy. Oh my
Jason,
god.
oh my gosh. We gotta move on.
Move on. Okay.
We're not talking about this right now. We're not talking about COVID. We're not talking about it.
I'm complaining about top billing.
Yes.
I don't like it. I don't like it.
Well, he's the antagonist, so he's the time. And at the time,
we don't
Thomas
see him
Jane
for like 40 minutes or some shit.
Yeah, I know, but think about. Okay, so at the time, Tommy. I don't think Jason Lee was even on My Name Is Earl yet, which is arguably his biggest role.
He was in Mallrats.
That's
oh wow, the
nobody
worldwide blockbuster.
Nobody
Mallrats.
gives a shit about Mallrats. I'll tell you, the only
What?
Mallrats' biggest fan besides myself is Kevin Smith. So
What about me? I'm right here.
You're number 3 after me.
I like Mallrats, but that is not a movie that like if I ask my mom who Jason Lee from Mallrats is, she's gonna be like, well, what the fuck? She knows who Morgan Freeman is.
Jason Lee actually has a bigger role than My Name Is Earl, and it's Alvin and the Chipmunks.
I watched Sonic. It wasn't that
also
bad.
Okay, Kaylin, the way the top billing works is it's a negotiation.
Whoever has the most money gets their name first.
It's a negotiation. So like they want Morgan Freeman. He will negotiate with the movie company saying, I'll do this movie for you, but I have to have top billing. Otherwise, I'm not going to be in your movie. And then
that seems like such a weird thing to want.
Well, it's what it is though. So
they just want their name first.
Thomas Jane
That's what I'm saying.
Is arguably the main character.
Egotism or whatever?
It's the system.
You guys are talking over each other.
Sorry. So top billing in your world, not in your world, that's condescending. In your
Kaylin's
logic, Kaylin's freaking world over here. In your logic would be it should go like Thomas Jane, Timothy Olyphant, et al. But the problem is those two guys, this is like their first movie. Those guys were literally nobody when this movie came out. But then you have Tom Sizemore, who at the time was a megastar, and then fucking Morgan Freeman, who rarely does these like main character situations. He's always like, I'm the wizened old man who shows up to fix a situation.
It was a different character.
And he also rarely plays villains. Like he's not.
He never plays a villain.
He does it from time to time, but it's
sure.
like it's usually he's like a heel turn villain where you think he's a good guy and then turns at the last second or whatever. But...
Or he's the narrator who is a character in the thing, and it turns out that he was the narrator all.
Yeah, remember War of the Worlds where he's not in the movie at all? He's just the voice that's like the aliens came and we all got blown up.
And then you get to the Kanye West Netflix special, and the guy that filmed the whole thing just puts on a voice, a Morgan Freeman voice. I don't know if you guys watched that. I assume, Steve, you're not super into Kanye West, but I imagine Kaylin may have seen Genius. I don't know. Did you watch Genius?
Yes.
Did you notice that the dude who filmed the thing just put on he doesn't sound like that, and then for when he's doing narration for that
he's trying to get an effect.
Yeah. Because that's who people know Morgan Freeman as, is the narrator guy, or the wizened character.
Yes, common. It is a common.
In this, he was fucking Hobbs. He was Murtaugh. Sorry, Hobbs. Oh, I was thinking Hobbs.
You thinking of Fast and Furious?
He was
thinking of Calvin and Hobbs.
No, I was thinking of Hobbs and Shaw. I was thinking of
watch the main Calvin and Hobbs movie soon. I'll watch that.
That would work. I'm gonna watch that. Did I talk to you guys already about how I'm definitely gonna watch the fucking Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers movie that's coming out in a couple weeks?
I saw a little ad. I'll probably check it out.
The trailer says the cameos, and then it shows like all the Disney cameos from like Saturday morning. What was it called? Disney Afternoon. Yeah, I'm in. I'm in for that. It's I'm the target demographic.
I mean, I liked the show when I was a kid, so I'll probably watch it as well.
But it's like meta. It's like
yeah, it looks like it's going to be a, we're aware that this
Modern.
is very like weird that we're making this a movie a million years after the show was a hit.
Yeah. Sorry, I took.
Yeah, let's go back to the movie.
Look, man, we didn't get to talk last week, so I'm.
I know. So,
a minute.
So everyone's getting very distracted. I'm going to do a quick synopsis of the plot of the movie. Try not to interrupt me. I'm going to make it quick.
Okay.
So the movie is about 4 friends who have been friends since they were children. They have a 5th friend of whom, when they were kids, they found being bullied by a bunch of jocks in Letterman jackets. They saved him, and ever since that day, the 5 of them were best friends with each other. They do say in the movie that they come to this cabin every year, and they've been coming there for the last 20 years. That flashback where they find out it was also 20 years earlier. So I was like, have they been going to the cabin since that year? They're still children. But anyway.
Is it a fuckery or a fuckaroo?
It was a fuckeroo.
Yo,
I'll tell you right
what's the difference?
We'll get to that.
Think,
I'm going to do a thing after Steve's done. I want to talk about the dialogue in this movie. Sorry, Steve.
He said not to interrupt. My bad.
Yeah, when you interrupted me with what is the difference between fuckery and fuckaroo? Obviously, one's bad and one's good.
I was going to say.
Fuckaroo is the bad one. They always say it when something bad's happening. Anyway, so they go to this cabin once a year. And one of them was injured in a car accident the year previous to that. And while they're there, they all have these sort of little miniature traditions. It's revealed that they kind of have this sort of unspoken bond that they don't really need to be particularly, they're not catching up, like they seem to be relatively present in each other's lives, whether it be a phone call or a visit or whatever. But while 2 of them are going out for supplies, the other 2 go hunting. They find some people that look to be in distress in the woods, and they take this guy back to their cabin, where he starts to display some odd symptoms of an illness. He says he ate some berries, but probably not. As this is happening, the other 2 almost hit somebody who's sitting in the middle of the road. This woman seems to have the same symptoms, some sort of mysterious illness. It's quickly then revealed that these people are infected with some sort of alien virus that causes you to shit out like an eel from your butt. And then these eels try to kill you, and then they lay eggs, and then the eggs turn into more of them. It's a little bit unclear to me as to whether or not those are like the infants of the aliens or like weird monsters they use to just take over slowly. I don't know. It wasn't really that clear to me, and they didn't really explain it. But we're then introduced to the military. And the military, it's not the actual government military or any kind of global military. They're like a private military that's like financed by the government to do stuff that regular military can't do, like blow up an entire town and just be like, oh, it was a gas leak.
They're immediately evil.
Yeah, they're definitely evil, and they're led by Morgan Freeman, who is, within his introductory scene, shoots the fingers off of one of his like underlings, basically, for lying to him. He doesn't even really know if he's lying either. The guy's like, I am pretty sure that I'm telling the truth. And then he shoots his hand out. He's like, it's lying. And then we get to the point where everybody slowly starts dying off, and then Jonesy, the guy who was hit by the car, is possessed, or I guess infected as well, but he's infected in a different way. I always read it that he was immune to the actual disease that was happening, but he also had something interesting in his mind, or powerful in his mind, and it caused the alien to want to explore his mind more rather than just infect him and kill him, use him as like a harvester or whatever. He just decides that he's going to go in there and bump around in his brain and use his body for what he can. And that was an interesting point to me because, the alien that has Duddits also picked somebody who's imperfect. So there's got to be some other reason he chose him, right? Whereas Mr. Gray is choosing Jonesy, not because he's physically adept. He's like barely able to walk and like he is weak, but he still chooses him because he has a reason to choose him. So I always assume that like Duddits has something else that he had that was special to this alien that could allow him to operate inside of him for so long without it being suspect, or there's just something there that was unique or special. I think that was kind of the point of that character. It comes down to the last 2 guys. Morgan Freeman's right-hand man, he ends up kind of heel turning for the good of humanity and sanity, and they end up at a water treatment plant at the end where Morgan Freeman gets killed, and then it's Mr. Gray versus Thomas Jane, and they all fight in like the most like piecemeal boring fight ever, but it's like also very appropriate. It's like a guy who can't walk versus a person who has like a mental disability, and a guy who can't use a gun, all around an open manhole cover. And that's the fight, and like everybody's fumbling around, and then finally these two aliens explode out of the two bodies and just flop at each other for a bit. And then the Earth is saved. And that's the end.
It does the thing I love in movies where they do the last thing and then credits, and that's it. Yeah. It didn't go like, oh, we have to tag on 10 minutes so we can go back and see what happened to everybody. No,
it kind of felt abrupt to me.
It's that I love it. I love it. You need to end movies like that more, especially if you're going to do that intro where you're like, oh, it's the 90s style, 80s and 90s style, like full credits at the beginning of the movie.
Yeah.
The movie has a 2 hour and 13 minute runtime if you watch it from the beginning to the end of the file that I watched. But really, I figured out that the movie is about 2 hours and 5 minutes if you stop it right at the end of the movie and start it right at the end of the opening credits. And I think it was a tight 2 hour movie. I hate 2 hour movies typically, but it doesn't
feel like a 2 hour movie. It feels an appropriate length for the amount of stuff that happens, and like I said, it gets you from point A to point B, and it takes you on a little journey, and you're interested in everything that's happening for the most part.
My favorite part of most movies are the final 20 minutes because it's usually like the resolution, and I was so psyched, like in the best way possible, when I looked at the time and I was like, oh, there's 20 minutes left. There feels like there should be so much more. That means they're just gonna tie up all these loose ends, and they do. I didn't end this movie going like, well, I wonder what next. It's just these two friends are left of the four friends. They won. They probably go back to their weird, dumb, sad lives. To your point of Thomas Jane kind of flopping and flailing, trying to like shoot a gun. It did feel very like realistic. Even though Thomas Jane looks like a movie star, he looks like an action star. They played the character very much like how somebody would probably actually react. And I kind of want to rescind what I was saying earlier about like how he looked kind of like a goof. I think you've swayed me to be like, I think the intention was to what would happen if a normal ass person was like put it in this
handed
situation.
A machine gun. I've never used a machine gun. I wouldn't know how to use it properly unless someone gave me like a 5 second like this is this is this.
When he first shoots the gun and he's just shooting all over the place.
Like that's probably what would happen to me if they didn't tell me like you gotta put it here and it's got a lot of kick, so be aware.
Well,
and then it jumps on the end and he shoots it while it's inside. It's the best. I love when that happens. Yeah.
To go back to the dialogue a little bit, the dialogue in this movie is all over the place.
It is. Sometimes but there's some really good moments in dialogue.
The thing that I wanted to bring up mostly was before it gets into like the what I call the Home Alone of it, when the aliens start doing this alien, like when quarantine starts. That's in my opinion, that's like when the Home Alone of it starts. When they're sitting around like being pals, I talked about this a little bit earlier, I felt it to be really forced, and maybe they spent more time on the later parts of the movies than they did of like trying to establish these guys as friends, because I think they're more established as friends in the flashbacks. Throughout this movie there's a bunch of flashbacks to when they were kids, and it literally feels like Stand By Me and It, like literally like a perfect combination of they're walking down train tracks.
That scene on the train, exactly.
To go see a thing. They're all getting together to go see a thing, but they're in Derry, and they have a little friend who's literally wearing like a yellow raincoat, and you know what I mean. Like it's so weird how they were able. Even the four kids felt like the kids from It.
What? He's not wearing a raincoat. What are you talking about?
Dissix.
Got it.
His name's
Duddits.
Douglas, everyone. His name
I
is
know.
Douglas.
Well,
Douglas,
his name's
I know.
Douglas, yeah, but he said it.
Duddits.
Also, shout out to was this before Sixth Sense or after Sixth Sense? This is after Sixth Sense, right?
Yes.
It kind of felt like Donnie was like reprising his role a little bit.
Donnie Wahlberg?
Yeah.
I don't remember his character. Oh, wasn't he like the killer or whatever?
Yeah, he was like mentally unstable guy in Sixth Sense, and he was like very frail.
Wait,
and
was
stuff
Donnie
looking.
Wahlberg future Duddits?
Yes.
Yeah.
I was the whole time I was like, where is Donnie? I looked at the IMDb while I was watching the movie and I noticed he was in it. And I'm like, where the fuck is he in this movie?
I don't know if he's reprising his role, but
He plays.
they definitely
special
chose
needs
him
very
for
well.
a reason. What were you saying again?
He has a in like a scene. He has like a red.
Oh,
he has a
yellow jacket shirt.
Yellow
He's good. No, I think it's a shirt.
raincoat.
I think it's a shirt.
Oh,
I just remember his red shirt and his overalls when he's getting beaten up. He has a yellow
Is it
lunchbox.
red and yellow?
It's after that.
Anyway, yeah, no, I mean, there's probably tons of little like callbacks to things and like, let's make this feel like a Stephen King visually just by doing this or this.
To the point though that when they said it was dairy, I was like, oh, is the gimmick of this movie that it's like a side story or a prequel or a sequel, or like these kids were dealing at the same time with a clown, or they also ran into Pennywise, or like I kept being like, what is this thing?
It was an alien as well, wasn't it?
Pennywise.
I think that if there's any connection, it would be that the alien was drawn to Derry because there's already an alien there, which is Pennywise.
Pennywise is an alien, right? Yeah.
Yeah, he came to Earth on an asteroid.
Ooh.
I think that,
but he shows you he manifests as a clown because most people are afraid of clowns.
Or something.
But he when he does spooks to you, he manifests your fears at you.
What
basically.
you're scared of, yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that like, so Stephen King, he does obviously connect things and use the same locations in order to be like, it's a grander scheme, but I don't think it's meant to be like these kids have run into Pennywise. If anything, they're just having their separate weird adventure in between those 32 years or whatever, where that's what Pennywise is gone.
That's what I was thinking. Like they're not connected. It just happens that in Maine, crazy things happen. Yeah. That's all it is. In that universe, it's kind of like in the MCU.
The devil came to town last week in Evil Things.
In the MCU, you just have to, as a civilian, you just have to deal with the fact that it's going to be fine. You're going to go to work, but your fucking car, you might walk out of work and your car might have been smashed up because Captain America was battling a fucking Winter Soldier in the streets. Or Thanos has come and like taken out the Lower East Side again because he was looking for some crystal that it was in a museum.
And if you're lucky, you'll get a second of screen time.
Yeah.
I will say that the child scenes in this movie were pretty painful. I don't know. They were
I thought they were some of the better child acting.
Man. The acting was rough.
Oh, it's so good. He's gonna go home so fast and tell his mom.
That was a dumb little plot line.
I don't like, but that's not.
Like,
that has nothing to do with the acting.
Tell my mom.
What's happening in the scene is fine. They're standing up for the kid, and they're like, "This is wrong. You're being shitty, and we're going to tell everybody about it." But like, each one of those kids felt like so over rehearsed, like their parents were on the sidelines, being like, "Say it like I told you to say it, like this, like that."
Oh yeah, that's what I mean. The delivery of it.
Yeah, the delivery is. It wasn't great for me. It wasn't great.
I couldn't stop thinking of Step Brothers during that scene.
The poo, yeah.
I got a belly full of white dog crap that I come home with.
That movie did it desensitized me to that scene, because if I'd seen this first, it'd be different. Yeah. But having seen that movie first and then seeing this, I laughed. Like
that's what I was talking about earlier with that Stephen King like brand of like unsettling horror versus like straight up scares.
Right.
It did unsettle me, but I immediately thought of Will Ferrell getting shit shoved in his face.
And also, like, I'm gonna go ahead and say I didn't immediately think of that at all. So that's nice.
Also,
nice
I feel like I feel like Stephen King used a special needs kid as that same kind of fear bit. Like it's always kind of unsettling when horror movies involve somebody who's developmentally disabled. I feel like, and it's played that way for kind of like a sympathy thing, because you don't want to see anything bad happen to somebody with special needs, right? And I feel like that's a trope.
Though,
it was different in this movie because it's more of a sci-fi thing, and it was more of a like it links them. The titular Dreamcatcher is kind of downplayed, but it's the scene where they're like Dreamcatcher formation and they all touch each other and then they get superpowers.
Well, no. Duddits is the Dreamcatcher.
Formation of Dreamcatcher.
Duddits was from the bad guy.
He's the one that gave them the powers to deal with all this stuff. He is the Dreamcatcher. He's the one that allowed them to to evolve beyond what their fears are. They don't have any fears because of Duddits. And like I think the whole thing is like the first time that they ever really truly feel fear that aren't like stupid human fears, which is what's being presented to us at the beginning of the movie, which is like Pete is like all he wants to do is go on a date, and that's his fear, is that like people think he's weird, which they do, because he's like, I'm gonna remember that you bought a Mars bar somehow when I wasn't here. Like that is weird. Somebody said that to me,
he was doing his little
she doesn't know that. She thinks that she was being watched by this man.
Yeah, they played that scene so innocently, like it was from his point of view. But when she drives away, she fucking puts her.
Did she show up at the date later? No.
Hell no, she did.
Because okay, Caitlin, imagine I walked in and was like, "Oh, yeah, you lost your keys. Let's go find them." And then I took you on your day's journey without you ever knowing my name or who I am, after me guessing your name, and then guessing you bought a fucking Mars bar, and then guessing which car was yours, and then putting my hand in a puddle and being like, ta-da. You would think that I was watching you from a tree the whole time.
Yeah, she was also attractive enough that's clearly, like, she clearly has problems with men being a little bit too clingy like that. So the fact that this dude was like, here's all the things, and I think that was a foreshadowing moment, so later it wasn't so weird when Thomas Jane does the same thing to Owen, I think his name is Tom Sizemore's character. And I liked that moment because at the end of it, Tom Sizemore is just like, I'm in, tell me everything you know. And I was like, whoa, like they never do that in movies. It's always still, the guy's still always like apprehensive, but he told him just the right things. Because the way that the psychicness works on these guys is very very weird. They can like see your memory, like they can like see your thoughts, but only like they can't tell the future. They can only like see.
It's like they're seeing
inside your mind.
They're experiencing your memory as you, kind of thing. Like they're reliving stuff that
or just your like just whatever thoughts you're thinking right then, even.
Yeah, because so Thomas Jane at the beginning of the movie, he was basically listening to this guy not even complain. He was just talking about how much he likes Carl's Jr. burgers, and then went home and ate Eggos or whatever.
He's also so
I go for a burger right now.
Thomas Jane's character is a therapist, and he doesn't use his powers because he could therapize these people in a way that's not ethical. And he finally has enough listening to this big fat guy talk about how he couldn't resist Carl's Jr. again, and then went home and ate a box of Eggos. And he gives him a little bit of like, he's like, here's the reason you did this, and then starts telling him his day. And the guy, it turns out later he went and ate himself to death. But then his friend is like, no, he would have done that anyway. That's just the nature of the beast. We can't.
Yeah. So what my point was that these are the human fears. These are the fears that we have as regular people. They still have those, but Duddits gave him these powers to be able to move beyond any kind of like physical fear, because they have the ability to avoid all danger. And they're basically a superhuman, like you said, which a lot of Stephen King characters are. Everybody has weird, like, telepathic abilities or telekinetic abilities, or the abilities to start fires telepathy with your brains.
Stephen King definitely loves telepathy,
and he loves telekinesis and fire starting, and he has all of this shit, has been in all of his movies, right, and his books. But I think that's what Duddits is supposed to be, is that he's literally the one that catches their fears for them rather than them having to experience them, and he gives them a little piece of power to do that. And obviously he had a plan for them, right? They all ended up having to sacrifice themselves in order to stop this alien invasion at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So,
and we know that Duddits was waiting, because when I thought it was a really weird to be like, we have to go get Duddits. And I was like, okay, that makes sense because they got the powers from them. But when they get to the house, the mom is like, he's been waiting for you and has no questions and is bye, go save the world now. And I was like, what? But
I felt like she probably either knew or
Yeah.
he had just revealed to her everything, or he had like given her like an understanding
exactly
without it mentally crushing her. He just like gave her the understanding of what's
did the
going on.
did the little like swirly pointy thing to her head, and then she was like, oh, like she basically ET.
And then he sneezes, and then it blows her brains out on like
Yeah.
the dinette set.
Yeah,
That actually sounds hilarious.
I wanted to do a fun little moment since we were just talking about the opening scene. And just real quick, what are your guys' favorite franchise burgers? Just real quick. For me, it's always going to be A&W, like a teen burger from A&W or something from Wendy's.
No, what? You can only pick one.
Okay, well, it's the teen burger from Wendy.
No, one
from A&W. It's the matzo burger from A&W or the teen burger. They're basically the same.
Yeah, different cheese.
It's A&W.
And
A&W is my fave because of the onion rings and the spice they use.
Steve?
Spicy chicken burger from Wendy's.
Nice. Good choice.
Good. For burgers, hands down, Jason, I agree with you. It's always A-Dub. A-Dub is the best. I used to do the teen burgers, but sometimes the tomato isn't the best tomato.
I said real quick. Also, side note, you guys just got in Halifax, but if you've never had the spicy crispy chicken, like the chicken sandwich from Popeyes, that shit is the bomb. I didn't know we could choose chicken for this hamburger question, but it's hands down, it's Popeyes crisp spicy.
Is that why there's such a big lineup?
Well, there's a lineup because you guys just got it in Halifax, but here you can just walk into a Popeyes and get food immediately. It's crazy. Who would have thought? Sorry, Steve. I wanted to do that segment. I knew you would have that reaction, but I did it anyway.
Arun says Shake Shack.
I think that if we talk about your favorite burger, it should end at that and not go on to discuss what soggy tomatoes you hate or whatever. Like, let's just fucking end it there.
How did Arjun have Shake Shack? Come on, that's an American thing.
Arjun lives in America.
Oh, is it good burger?
Okay, good call. Isn't it? Is it California only, or is that In-N-Out, or is that?
I don't live in America.
White Castle real, or is it made up for a movie?
No, White Castle's real. You can actually here you can get the burgers, the tiny sliders.
They'll mail it to you?
No, you buy them from the grocery store, and then you have to steam them because they're steamed hams. It's true. They're steamed hams.
SSD.
Despite the fact that they are obviously grilled.
They're not. They're steamed. The White Castle is steamed.
I know. I was just making a Simpsons reference.
Oh. Steamed clams?
Yeah.
No, steamed hams.
Yeah. Aurora Borealis. At this time of year, at this time of day, isolated in your kitchen? Yes. May I see it? No.
No.
Is it just me, or did you guys think Duddits was speaking German in the ambulance?
Just you.
Yeah, I was like, where did this special needs kid come from? Did I miss something? Did I look away and miss this
$1.30 a burger? I want a fucking $1.30 burger.
Okay, Freeman's eyebrows are crazy.
Oh, the reason why I wanted to bring up the dialogue earlier was because of,
that's what I wanted to keep talking about.
One line in the movie that threw me through a loop, where Jason Lee just goes, "Got blown last night," and that's when they started talking about a fuckery turning into a fuckaroo. And a fuckery is like a jamboree, I think, of fucking. But a fuckaroo is when you get fucked over. And that's been my Team America moment of explaining swear words.
Nice.
Yeah, I think that one just means something good and the other one means something bad. And every time something bad happens, they say fuckaroo. So that's the bad one.
But both times they were hooking up with people. That's why I couldn't understand it, because he's like, he had a fuckery with a girl, and then another guy had a fuckaroo with a girl. I'm
Well,
like,
fuckaroo is
okay.
turns out bad with the
Fuckaroo is the girl that doesn't show up. He says another
Yeah.
fuckaroo and walks
Turns
away
into a
because he knows
fuckaroo.
that she's not going to come to the clam
Ah,
dinner.
Got blown last night. I laughed.
see,
I
I'm
laughed.
dumb. I didn't even realize the SSDD. And I messaged you because I was watching it at the same time. Shortly after I asked it, he says same shit, different day. Like I did,
I didn't know what SSDD meant, and I was watching that conversation happen, and I just clicked for me now. And I don't recall them ever saying that in the movie, but Steve pointed out that they do say it at some point.
At least
they say it more than once, but also there's a point where they're walking, and then Timothy Olyphant says, "So is this SSDD or what?" And then the other guy goes, "No, it's definitely different shit. It's definitely different shit."
Yeah. See, that can be taken multiple ways, though. If you're not paying attention to the fact that they say same shit, different day. I knew that SSDD was like the name, because what it reminded me
of, like a group thing or something.
When I was in like high school, I had a group of friends and we used to like scroll. I don't even remember what it was, but we scrawled something everywhere, right? Like, this is our crew.
He doesn't want to give away his tag.
No, I don't. I'll take it to my grave. But that reminded me of that sort of thing. That's just something that you bring from your childhood. But now it makes so much sense because that shit they had it carved into the table. In the phone booth, he was like writing it when Jonesy is constantly drawing Dreamcatchers and writing SSDD. An interesting thing about that book is so the story kind of goes that Stephen King was in a car crash. He was in a car accident, and he rehabbed his writing ability by writing this book in cursive, right? Which is I don't know if the actual print is in cursive or not. I couldn't verify if it wasn't, but it seems like it might be.
Right.
It seems like there might be you can get prints of it that are in cursive that are based off of his actual his notebook that he wrote it in.
Nice.
He hates this book. He doesn't hate it. He doesn't care for it because he wrote the entirety of this book while rehabbing his accident on OxyContin.
Yes.
So that's why it kind of feels like an opioid nightmare.
Yeah, because he was on meth, or he was on opium.
Well,
but
OxyContin is an opioid.
I mean, but it's also not the first time he's written a book like high out of his goddamn mind. So
no, but this is a different high because he very famously, like we talked about, Needful Thing is it feels like he just got a rehab and has some anger he needs to work out. This feels like he has a lot of survivor remorse or something. What's it called? Survivor's guilt.
I think that's when you survive and people die. Did someone die in the car?
Well, I don't know, but maybe.
Didn't he just get hit by a car? Like a car hit him? I don't think that
PTSD maybe.
He had survivor's remorse because he didn't die.
Yeah, he's like, I wish I died.
Anyway, I thought that was an interesting Stephen. I think every one of these movies that is an adaptation is going to be. I'm going to look up the Stephen King story behind it. It's going to have something because it seems like this guy has led a very literary life. You know, like everything's super dramatic because he is a writer and he's able to spin it in such a way.
I'd be down to hang out with them maybe once.
He went on to the Atkins diet in the late '80s, and he wrote Thinner.
He got AIDS and wrote Thinner.
I didn't want to say that joke, but okay, I'm glad you did.
It's been long enough. We can make jokes about AIDS.
I'm pretty sure it's still around.
Wrong with me.
It is, but it's been 24 and a half years as of a decade ago, according to South Park. The Jared episode.
I think last month proves that it's still not okay to trust Trey Parker and Matt Stone when
we can't trust them.
Joke.
I can trust them less for comedy than I could before we did that study of them. It was a tumultuous month of my birthday.
Oh,
and then I got COVID, so maybe there is a grand plan after all.
There is some good.
You think it's because of them you got COVID?
I think there's still some pretty good moments in terms of dialogue in this movie that aren't super chunky and lame, but are still clearly cinematic. Like they're there just to cap a scene, but they always work for me every time.
I hope I didn't come off as negative towards this movie. It wasn't amazing. I'm not gonna lie, but it definitely was captivating, and it. I guess the thing that I like the most is probably got us talking the most out of like recent movies.
Yeah, I think that all the movies this month are gonna leave us talking because there's
So much
lots to
more.
talk about.
There's so much more to talk about in a horror drama thing than there is to talk about in a comedy. And going forward, I think I'm never gonna.
This was a comedy.
There were definitely comedic elements. I wouldn't really call it a horror comedy, but the first like act of the movie was played as comedy. But I'm never gonna be like, let's do a Will Ferrell month. The ship before the Trey Parker and Matt Stone month, I would have been like, let's do that. Let's do like Anchorman, Step Brothers, and maybe throw in like Sherlock Holmes because it's so bad that there's lots to talk about. But comedies like that just don't work for this format unless you're gonna do that's your gimmick. I want to do more movies like this. I want to do John Carpenter and Stephen King and weird movies I would never watch. Just
that's what I'm talking about.
That's why.
Hey, did you see this one?
Did you see this one? And even Cannibal the Musical was actually the best. I think we got the most out of that of all the Trey Parker and Matt Stone.
That's because it was interesting to talk about how it was made, whereas
yeah,
there wasn't really much else to talk about for the how it was made aspect of the other movies.
And the story is more of a story, weird, like ironically enough, than the other movies. Like the other movies were like a series of gags, where that was like they wanted, like there was more of a story there than a series of gags.
So there were a couple of other things I wanted to talk about, which is just mostly like the dialogue, which we still haven't really kind of focused in on, but and then also like again the moments of like their powers. So like, you know, the best moments were at the beginning when you're seeing their powers, and like the only person whose power was sort of ambiguous was Jones's, and you know that he knew that kid was cheating, but he doesn't really explain how, and he doesn't explain it to anybody else. But the one thing that like was focused in on that entire scene was his compassion for humanity. And you see that again when he's a kid, right? When he's like, this is wrong, and I'm going to tell everybody that this is wrong. When the kid that he's reprimanding for cheating, the whole time he's staring at this kid's shoes, and these shoes are like falling apart, right? And he's like, you're a scholarship student. Yeah. Well, he's like, this kid's poor and he needs the scholarship, and if he doesn't have the scholarship, he's not going to get through school. So like he rips up his thing and says, write me an essay instead. And so like in that one moment, I kind of understood who his character was. And it is interesting that his character is the one that ends up being the villain, because it's now like this person who is the paragon of good out of this group of friends is the one that's turned essentially to evil and having to battle this evil inside of him. Whereas the other ones are mostly dealing with themselves, and they already have this like baggage. He's the only one that seems to not really have it until he's hit by that car. And so my question is like, did Duddits make him get hit by that car specifically to slow him down in the end, where he has to like make his way slowly from point A to point B? Did he give him a bit of baggage that he has to deal with physically so that he can toughen himself up mentally to be able to deal with Mr. Gray when it goes into his mind at the end? Or is it to slow down the progression of what events are to come to prepare the rest of the world? There's like all these different
you just made me like this movie so much more
too. I like the first one you said, and also it sort of the events had to be pushed into motion some way too. As soon as he got hit by the car, I guess there's that year before they go on their annual trip, but like
6 months or whatever.
They needed to be aware of the potential for something horrible to happen. What I don't like is how they just kind of ham-fisted jammed in the like, you're in quarantine now, It should be good. And like when the helicopter flies over.
Yeah, it
like,
felt a little
quarantine.
bit. I would have really liked a lot more forest slow burn
Yeah.
where you're trying to figure out what's going on as an audience,
Like
rather
more
than
like
just
the
more
be
Mist.
like,
mystery.
More like
aliens are here.
More
Yeah.
like the opening bit of the Mist, where they're all kind of at each other's throats and they're all hunkered down in that grocery store, and they're all just like trying to figure it out, and nobody's trusting each other. I guess it's
Yeah,
hard to
and-
do where there's only when there's the cast is 4 people for most of the movie.
right.
But-
And a lot of a lot of the stuff that is the most interesting in this movie is the first, half an hour where they're discussing these little things that I'm still thinking about, being like, we got answers to what's going on in the grander scheme of things, but like we didn't really get full explanations to stuff like that. And I would have liked it to be a little bit slower, and maybe they didn't need as much like crazy Morgan Freeman
Like
blowing people's hands off and shit.
hard action.
Oh, what
Yeah.
if they just had him come at the very end, not have any of his other stuff? That would
Then
be
it would have been
dope.
really confusing.
It'd be real- but I kind of see what Kaylin's saying, but I think that
Yeah, I know. I mean, like, I would have liked it to have been far less focused on that other character. The
Morgan Freeman is the foil, though.
Owen,
you
the
know,
second in command or
you need
whatever?
like
Yeah.
you need like your main bad guy, which is obviously Mr. Gray, but you need a foil in a movie that's sort of we're also working against your hero.
But it
And-
could have been that they didn't have both of those military characters. They could have had just one of them, or focus far less, because there are so many
But
scenes.
one of them becomes kind of good though.
Yes, I know that, but there are so many scenes where Morgan Freeman is alone or with another commander that has nothing to do with it. Like,
Yeah,
we
he
don't
mono-
need to see that much into his mind.
He
We know that he's
monologues
evil.
a lot in this
Yeah.
movie.
Like, we saw him shoot that guy's hand off. That's all you need. You don't really need to keep having these moments with Morgan Freeman. They could have
That's
just
what
like,
I'm saying. Get rid of him.
okay, well then, yeah, I agree. But what I'm saying is that you don't need both of those military guys. You need one of them to be the foil, yes, but then the other one to get Thomas Jane out. That guy could have died like immediately after getting Thomas Jane out, and then it could have been Thomas Jane to the end, right?
Mhm.
Anyway, I'm saying that there's things that like it could have led to a little bit more of Thomas Jane having to deal with things by himself, which would add more tension. And it ended up being mostly humor stuff with those two, right? Being like, oh, this is John Wayne's gun, and then
The
he
gun
answers it.
phone.
The gun
Yeah.
phone is funny, and I really like the gun phone, but like the gun phone would have been funny either way if like that guy was there or he wasn't there, right? There's the added humor of him being like, "Give me my gun back" afterwards. Like, what are you doing, talking to my gun like a phone? Anyway, I think the most compelling bits of the movie were everything until you understood what was going on, right?
Mhm.
Where you're like, oh, I now understand that these aliens are here, and that happens pretty quickly. Like it's like it goes from they stumble upon a straggler in the forest, things get bad and weird, and then they get very bad and very weird very quickly, and then over the
That
next like
one lady got
15
the
minutes.
cover.
What?
That one lady got the cover. That kind of pissed me off.
The one lady got the cover. I don't know what you mean.
On the cover of this movie is that one lady.
Oh yeah.
Oh, that's okay.
But also
There are other posters as well.
that poster though, like I did see that poster come up a bunch, and that her being on that cover and the orientation of the Dreamcatcher and the way that it shows the forest,
Made me think something else.
it still feels like you're going to be dealing with like First Nations people putting a hex.
Yeah.
That's the vibe I got from that particular, and that's like the movie poster. You know, that's probably the thing that was in when you walk through the theater and you see the posters. It's probably that's probably why people. My memory of this is that people were thinking it was going to be one thing, and then like Stephen King with
Turned
aliens.
around. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, let's get grooving to the end here, I guess.
There's
Yeah,
one thing
yeah.
I wanted to bring up.
Well, I still had some more dialogue stuff I wanted to talk about, but we can just
This
Tell
this
us the
fits into the
dialogue
dialogue. This fits into the dialogue. This movie had a real like Tarantino, Kevin Smith undertone where there was a lot of like movie referencey stuff, which I probably wasn't.
Robert Rodriguez.
Probably
That's the name you're looking for.
What?
Robert Rodriguez is like Kevin Smith and Quentin Tarantino.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. But there was a lot of like that undertone of you're watching a movie where they're talking about other movies. And the biggest one was that scene where they're sitting around the table and he tells the story about how like you know, they never talk about the nitty gritty in movies. They always show like the nice part of things. And he tells the joke from that. I'm not gonna do the joke. It was basically, he talks about his bad breath.
Where's your cat?
My mouth tastes like cat shit or whatever.
I like how Jason says I'm not going to do the joke, and Kaylin immediately rolls into doing the joke.
But the other one that I wanted to notice is Morgan Freeman basically looks at the camera and says, "I'm too old for this shit," but he says it in like, too old for this shit or whatever. And I'm wondering, I'm pretty sure if I was to guess, that wasn't in that stuff isn't in the book. That might be a
Stephen King does that a lot in books, man. He references, he makes pop culture references all the time in books.
Nice.
So I wouldn't be surprised if, like, so the monster is called Ripley, and then they're like, he's like, you know, like those alien movies, and it's like they named it after the movie Aliens, and
That
it's like
badass
I kind of like that. I'm like, yeah, that's
I like
cool.
it. I like it as well. But
it makes it more authentic.
It's interesting.
Makes me feel like I'm in real life. Like aliens are real.
I just like movies that
But we would do that though. Like we talk, you know what I mean? Like when you're in a setting,
Yeah.
you would quote other things.
Well, our whole podcast is like a conversation in a Kevin Smith movie where they're trying to, like in Clerks, where they're trying to figure out if when the thing turns into rock, is this cock rock, or is the Hulk's dick a giant green?
Look how long
dick?
that looks.
Yeah. That's all. I just wanted to bring that up about the dialogue.
Yeah, no, I had that note as well, that there's lots of movie references. My favorite being the one that the name of the red shit is Ripley. I like that. That's kind of cool. There is a good moment, like I was saying to Kaylin when you had walked away there for a second, there are lots of corny bits of dialogue, but they're very scene cappy, where like it caps the scene perfectly and then cuts.
Last night.
They must have. That's like the beginning of a scene. That's how it starts.
I know, fair enough, but I can't stop.
You're like undermining the point I'm making by saying the same blowjob joke that you've said 4 times already.
Someone needs a blowjob.
Like there's one part where, you know, he's explaining to Thomas Jane that he has been thinking a lot about Duddits lately, and then they have this back and forth conversation. He's like, "You believe me, right?" And he's like, instead of like him saying anything, he just says, "Well, yes, sir, I do." Like he like completely believes him 100%. And then he asks him like, "What do you think it means?" And Thomas Jane, as though you're ending chapter 1 of a book, says, "Well, maybe there's more to the story that we don't get yet." And then it like cuts this, and I'm like, oh, what a nice way to end the scene. Spooky. I like it. And there's like a few other ones that are pretty funny, like that remind me of people in real life, that like you ask them a rhetorical question and they answer it with like an answer that you're like, what the fuck? Like when the guy is,
are you pointing at me? Yeah.
When the guy is like dying, and then he's like, well, Henry will know about this, and he's like, he's not an intestine major. I can't remember what he calls it, like an enterologist, I believe is what he says. And then he's like, well, you went to medical school, did you? And then Jonesy just like stares at him for a second. He's like, I thought about it. And I'm like, I know people who would answer the question like that. Also ending the scene, very good. And then did you guys notice that like star wipes just started coming, like Star Wars style
I was
wipes?
just getting to that note. Halfway through the movie, once the aliens show up, they start doing Star Wars, yeah, star wipes like to the left. I think it's just the one that goes this way.
It's like the sideways ones. Yeah, there's not too many crazy ones, but
Star Wars, as you both know, you've seen the Star Wars movies, some of us more than others, but one of the things that is almost jarring is every scene ends with a star wipe that is a flat.
Calm down, not every scene.
Pretty much every scene. It always goes to the next scene very quickly with a
It's because that's what they used to do in old TV, and Star Wars is but Star Wars television inspired.
When it's in Star Wars, it's very iconic looking. You know,
yeah, it's weird in this movie, and it's weirder that it only starts happening halfway through the movie, where you're like, as soon as the alien stuff starts coming in, Lawrence Kasdan's like, and now we go into Star Wars mode. Like
maybe that was the reference. That was
I
think it
wouldn't be
absolutely
surprised
is.
if that's exactly what he was doing. Where he's like,
We could probably go back and watch this movie and find the star wipes to be points that are very like the most
Poignant.
sci-fi moments of the movie. Probably.
Definitely. We were watching the movie like a few months ago. I watched this with my friend Naveed and Brian and my friend Ryan. And as that first Star Wars wipe, me and Naveed both went, "Whoa, Star Wars!" Like we both just like screamed it at the top.
I just went through. I was reading my notes. That's why I was looking away. And my next note was random Star Wars wipe when they catch Thomas Jane.
Yeah. Star wipes. We can call them star wipes, even though they're not star wipes. They're Star Wars wipes.
No, a star wipe is the same thing, but it's an actual like the shape is a star instead of a.
No, I know, but I'm just gonna shorten Star Wars wipe.
I love
to
it.
Star wipe. Star Wars
Well,
wipes are probably an actual product for like wiping your baby's butt or something, you know, like Kylo Ren baby wipes or some shit.
Ooh, that probably is a thing.
Also to go back to talking about how they talk about how Morgan Freeman's lost his mind. Morgan Freeman's character himself says at one point, "Even I don't trust my judgment anymore," which is fucking another chef's kiss line. Like this dude is
even
crazy.
in the first,
He's as crazy as his eyebrows.
even in the first scene after he blows that guy's fingers off, when the other guy walks back in, he's like, "You think I'm crazy, don't you?" And the other guy says, "A little bit." Like he just doesn't say, no, you're fine. He's like, "Yeah, you're fucking nuts.
You're a little crazy, bud."
Yeah,
One
like,
of the
there's no point in the movie where the guy ever defends his own sanity. Like he knows that he's lost his mind.
One of the
But
ones
he's got
that
a job to do.
reminded me of me was when Jason Lee's character is trying to remember what's that actor's name, Reefer Sutherland or whatever.
Yeah,
Oh yeah. Oh, Kiefer.
Kiefer Sullivan. Yeah, there are times when you watch movies like this where it's like groups of friends and you're like, which one would I be? Like you watch it and you're trying to determine which one you are.
I would be Jason Lee because my name is Jason and I'm a wisecracker. I think I'm a wisecracker. I think that the implication for his they never mentioned it and I was waiting for it, but I think the implication would be that he needs the toothpicks because he's an ex-smoker and that's why he needs them so bad.
Yeah, it's like a stress thing.
And that could have been one line to make that a little bit more impactful that he dropped them. Because when you're stressed out and you need to smoke and you're an alien's trying to climb up your butthole.
But the thing is like I think that the implication is there to the point that I understood that without needing him to be like, really wish
the fact that I thought of
that
I thought of that, and they're clearly like, you know, they're 30 years old, you know.
Yeah.
Ask any 30-year-old if they've smoked in the past or if they're still a smoker and they're like dealing with it.
Yeah.
Kalen's literally vaping right now.
Just that's us bringing up that Kalen's like, hold on, let me get some tobacco in me, some wacky tobacco. I have to go to the washroom. I'll be right back. I'm so sorry.
Okay.
Don't be. You stuff your stories in a sack.
Me and Kalen are gonna sit here and just stare at each other.
I mean, that's like a good 2 minutes of good watching.
Does this look like my screen froze?
When you don't move, yeah, it does. I thought this movie was trying to tell me something by having Duddits call him Mr. Gay and have the aliens be butt monsters.
See, you guys were talking, I think you brought that up in the group chat, and I was trying to, so it's funny too, because several days, you watched this last week, and I was sick, but I was looking at the group chat, and I was like, what the fuck are they talking about? Is this a comedy? See, what I thought when you guys were talking about it like that, I thought that there was some gimmick where a Dreamcatcher, they went to a cabin, because I read the synopsis on Google, but I didn't finish the synopsis.
Yeah.
I just saw cabin.
Before the show more part.
yeah. I just saw cabin. I saw you guys talking about it. And I was like, oh, do they go to this cabin and there's like a dream catcher that they have that's mystical and it keeps catching like weird monsters from the aether realm? And I was like, that seems more like a sophomoric attempt at doing a Stephen King thing. But no, you guys were just talking about the fact that the alien, it's born in your
has a speech impediment or whatever.
It incubates in your stomach and then it shits out of your ass.
Yeah.
And then
it incubates in your throat, into your chest, down to your stomach. It's like,
right.
I felt like it was like eating you on the way down.
That sounds right.
And that's why you're fucking sweating and molding over.
Farting so much.
And the hilarious farts and burps. And it's like, what a weird. And that's another one of those Stephen King unsettling.
It was like a misdirect almost.
Kind of, but it's another one of those Stephen King, like, makes you feel weird and you can't really put your finger on why.
Yeah, but you also know something's wrong immediately, right? When it's like they're not going to throw something like that in unless that's the cause of something in a movie, especially. You're like, he starts burping and farting and you're like, oh my god, something's wrong with this man.
Trying to get the easy laughs, going for the cheap laughs.
I don't think that was meant to be.
I don't think it was meant to be that funny.
If I remember watching that in the theaters when I was like a teenager, and I remember being pretty freaked out by it. I was like, oh my god, those burps are death burps and those farts are murder farts. This is going to end badly for everyone. So it also, I wanted to say, it does feel very 2000s in terms of the music. Like the music throughout the movie is very, like, it almost reminds me of like Resident Evil or like Silent Hill, just like the synthy stuff mixed with the orchestral stuff. But
and on top of that, a lot of like the view of somebody looking at a thing. This movie does that a lot, where you just see somebody's reaction to a thing and they don't like cut to it to have you do the reaction until like it goes a little bit too long, and then they show whatever they're reacting to, and it's not that, it's the, you know, it's, I don't know how to put this. I'm rarely at a loss of how to explain something, but this fits into my whole, like, Stephen King is able to do that thing with his writing, and when it's translated to film, make you feel uncomfortable in a way you can't really articulate. And the showing somebody react to something might have a little bit more impact in this context.
Yeah, when they first bust into the bathroom, it holds on,
and they're like,
the two of them, and they look horrified, and you don't know what they're looking at.
I was like, just show it, just fucking show it, please, just show it. And that's what I think, that's the intention of the director.
But
yeah, and it's also like, even when they start to show what they're looking at, they don't show it fully. They show like a bit of it, and they show like random kind of disjuncted images of the room, and you're still not even sure what you're looking at, as I assume that would be what it's like to walk into like a murder scene. You'd probably be like,
what are all of these things that are assaulting my senses?
What's happening right now?
Why did he run away and then come back just to say, sit tight, buddy, and then go again to get the duct tape?
It should be funny. It was
camaraderie.
Could be a funny thing. Yeah,
that was the comic relief.
Well, he came back too with the tape, like, I got it. Like, he was like psyched. He was like, I did it. And then his friend was horribly murdered.
Also, at that point, they didn't understand the danger they were in. Yeah. They knew there was something in the toilet, but they didn't think it could get out. And
we, as viewers, knew they were in a Jurassic Park situation.
Yeah.
Them, as the shit happening to them, they thought that they had a weird problem with the toilet, as far as they knew.
They knew that guy was dead, but they didn't know that what was in the toilet was going to be a toothy eel.
A super leech.
Yeah. Super leeches.
And that's not even the leeches weren't even that scary as a thing, but I think they're more menacing and more sinister when you know that they're like an appendage of this alien who looks anthropomorphic, but then can turn into like a horrible monster itself when it's moving. Like that, I want to know way more about these aliens and why they like, they're like shapeshifters.
So what I read that was that the weird leechy slithery thing is their actual form, and the other one is what they take to try and make you feel more comfortable as a human being when you're looking at them, because they look more like us.
So they're a race. They're a race that goes from planet to planet, like indoctrinating and taking over.
Right, or like they like that's what they when they look at us, that's what they see. They're approximating what a human looks like. So like the grays, like the aliens, the grays, like that's what these are supposed to be, I assume, which is why his name is Mr. Gray.
They looked very like great, like classic grays, like big eyes, like
except they're
head.
like 12 fucking feet tall or whatever. Yeah. Which is like scary as hell. But I just assume that like that's the form they take when they're interacting with human beings, to try and make you feel a little bit more comfortable. Because when they're waving and they're like, help us, they're taking that form. And as soon as the helicopter fire comes, they turn into like some tremor snake.
Yeah. Is Bucko a rank?
Bucko?
Yeah. No, Bucko is just, hey,
it
Bucko.
could be in that private army, because they had a bunch of weird ranks, like that they were saying. Like they didn't have like it wasn't like a proper ranking system, because they're not military. They're just a bunch of people that are following one crazy person.
Pussies compared to them, or whatever they said.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's because they're allowed to like murder children and shit for the betterment of the world. But it's horrifying to think about that there would be like entities like that exist, that just come in, that are separate from the government, but they look like the government. Like if you were to walk up to them, you would assume, oh, I'm safe now, because the government is here to save me. And then it's like they're not going. There's just like some private organization that's like, go into this tent, you'll be fine. And like the way they're lying to them and stuff, the people being like, well, remember when he talks to Morgan Freeman, he's like, we'll get you on your way in a day or two or whatever. It's like, he's clearly just lying to you. He's just gonna burn you alive. Oh man. There's a lot of like weird moments like that, like interpersonal conversations and stuff that like you don't really know what people are thinking. And I also was like, is this purposeful? Like, did they make it so that these four people always know what each other is thinking and what everybody else is thinking? But when you're watching Morgan Freeman and the other guy talk to each other, it's like you don't know what either of them are actually thinking, and it's kind of difficult to pin down what they are until those other people are around who can just like spell it out for us.
I like it.
The secret office in his mind where he hides shit is the same room that they saw that picture in the warehouse. I don't know if you guys noticed that.
I did notice that, yeah.
That was fun. That was a fun touch that you probably wouldn't even notice unless you watched it more than once.
I like the box that said jerk off memories or whatever. And then like the ages, and then like one was like forbidden or whatever.
He also had a box that said like suicidal like triggers or whatever, like something to trigger suicide. Like, oh my god.
I think it was like,
I thought it was
horrific
injuries.
No, it was sports humiliations. It was sports humiliations. Yeah, that's what it was. And then it was like fine and like hard to deal with and like suicidal.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, why not burn all those other ones? But I mean, again, it's metaphorical, but like if I had the ability to go inside my memory warehouse and burn some of those memories that I have, I would do it immediately.
I love the concept of the memory warehouse. And I think that it should be, you made a really good point earlier when you said that like there's lots of movies where you see somebody taking over and you sort of have the actor have to do what that actor does, where Jones is like talking to himself and in another accent or another voice. But to actually have a tangible representation of him going to another plane of consciousness and looking from inside, like it's looking out a window. It's really cool. It's a really cool way to.
And it also like the set design of that warehouse was very cool. It was very fun looking. It reminded me of like Harry Potter or something almost. You know, like it has like this sort of fun design to it, like this very over the top stylized spiral staircases library look to it, but it also was like super industrial, and like the floors are made of like iron wrought, and it was just like, it was good. All of it was very visually appealing to me. I was like, I like this memory warehouse and I'd like to have my own.
I would like to go to my own memory warehouse. In fact, I'm going to start remembering my memories that way. Hold on a second. I'm accessing memories in my memory warehouse.
Clink, clink, clink. Oops, I kicked over a porn box.
Oh god, there's porn everywhere.
There's porn everywhere.
That's the weird stuff too.
And I jizzed in my pants.
And you jizzed in his pants.
I wrote down him having John Wayne's gun is fucking dumb, but I also think it's funny.
You know what I thought was dumb?
What?
In 2003, smartphones didn't exist yet, but the technology definitely did. But I'll tell you where they weren't. They weren't in GPSs inside of a fucking gun as the
Right.
tracker. Like they
Who
made
created
like
that?
what a
Maybe
weird,
like a tank, like a
but
machine
like
with a rocket launcher.
just do this dumb thing where you put a tracker on the car or like put a tracker in his pocket. Like why
Yeah.
the gun? What was that? Like
Because
this is gonna blow some minds.
It's
He's
it
not
was
going to get rid of that gun.
yeah. I think that was like the point. Was like it was like a very special thing to him, and he
Yeah,
knew that if he
okay.
gave it to him, he would never just huck it. To be
I
like,
just
this
thought
guy.
in 2022, knowing that you could literally just hack somebody's phone to be like a Jeep, like to be a tracker, to
Mhm.
have it inside of a gun was really funny visually to me.
Right. It's like, why is your gun beeping? Bleep, bleep,
Beep, beep.
bleep, 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 bleep. I don't know.
I don't know. That's weird. It doesn't normally do
But
that.
no, Kaylin's right. It's definitely like it was meant to be like this is a thing this guy will never throw away. I could give him anything and he would probably find it suspicious, but me giving him this gun for years of service, he'll never get rid of it. He'll cherish it to the day he freaking dies.
They like guns in the
Nice.
army/non-army.
Also, if it's John Wayne's gun, I mean, even if someone gave me John Wayne's gun, I'd be like, wow, cool.
Not
I guess
today,
I'll keep
Pilgrim.
this thing, I suppose, until I'm desperate.
I'm gonna shoot it off into the sky.
The only impression I know is about a pilgrim.
Yep. Let's take it. Let's take this home.
Yeah.
Late. I got work in the morning.
Yeah. Okay.
I
Well,
went through all my notes. I got through all my notes. I think I brought up everything that I wanted to bring up. Surprisingly.
oh,
This
the one
movie
thing
was-
that I wanted to bring up was like the noise that when he puts his hood up and it's like it makes that crazy noise.
The
And-
second in command guy.
No, fucking Jones when Mr. Gray puts the hood up and he's like becoming Mr. Gray, it makes like a very
Yeah.
distinct sound effect, and it's like a stock sound effect that you'll hear in like hundreds of video games and cartoons and shit. Like it's this very specific sound
I
effect.
know he's like walking around the front of the police car, I think, or right when he gets to the
It
military
happens
truck.
twice. It happens. Actually, I think
And-
it happens 3 times. Yeah.
Yeah, I know the sound you mean. It's very specific and it's from video games.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really liked all of Jonesy's scenes with like getting a progressively better car.
Mhm.
His little adventure that he goes on, and he gets to the dog, and the dog, like he's like, "Oh, you're my dog, and you're gonna do so good for me," and then he just fucking
He's
impregnates.
like, come on, doggy. And he's being nice to the dog too. Like he's carrying it around. He's like, good doggy, good dog. Yes. Carrying my eggs, my egg babies.
He should have just thrown the whole dog in the fucking reservoir, which was I thought what he was gonna do.
Again, you know, maybe there had to be some sort of gestation to oxygen before water for it to work. We can just nitpick all day, but at the same time, there's so many things you can nitpick in this movie.
I'm
and
here to
that's not
nitpick.
what I'm gonna go for.
Also, one thing I wanted to mention that we talked about at the top of the show about Stephen King's like books and novellas versus being turned into things. With a book, you have to condense, and with a novella or a short story, you can expand on. And I think that's why we, for the last 2 episodes, we're sitting here going, "What the fuck?" You know, we feel like we're missing something. And then when we did Stand By Me, we were able to talk about how they expanded on a very clear idea that was probably, how long is Stand By Me? It's probably like essay length, right? Or it's probably like 60 pages, 100 pages.
Yeah, it's a short story inside of like a not even a huge novel. Like
It's like the 4 Seasons thing, right? Like,
yeah.
is that
It's
all in
not
one
yeah,
book?
it's a short story. And so like I said, like his short stories are very easily translated. Christine, I believe, is a short story. I watched that last night, and like I almost felt like that movie was maybe a little bit too stretched out. Where
Is
they
Maximum
probably could have more.
Overdrive a short story as well?
I don't know, I've never read
Is
it.
that Stephen King?
Yeah,
It's like
we've been
Christine
making this
to the next
yeah.
to the next level, to the maximum level of Overdrive.
Which I
Car
would like
hell.
to watch.
Do maximum. Yeah.
It's a book. It's a 1986 American comedy horror film directed by Stephen King.
Whoa.
That
Holy shit.
How many things has he directed?
Not a lot, because I
Not
don't
a
think he's
lot,
the
yeah.
greatest director. Because again, he's very good literary, but when it comes to like staging shots and stuff, he's not really the great. Like, I think he had a lot of input on the Shining TV show, and that ended up feeling real like goosebumpsy.
The new
like a Goosebumps
one,
episode.
the one that came out recently, or is there an old one?
There's an old one.
Oh no, I'm thinking of the sequel.
Oh, Doctor Sleep. That movie was sick.
Yeah, I haven't seen it, but like, yeah. So he wrote the screenplay and he directed it, and it's based off Trucks by Stephen King. And Trucks is, if this fucking shit will load, I assume a short story. Yeah, it's a short story. So it's based off Trucks, turned into a screenplay. All of the processes Stephen King up to this point, then directed by him. So I think maybe June Henson just turns into a second month of Stephen King.
Oh my god.
No,
I mean,
sorry.
there's lots.
Also, spoilers. Next June is it's truncated because I got COVID, but it's June Henson.
You got the Ripley.
I got the
Ripley.
Ripley.
A couple. All right. I think I've gone through all of my notes. There are a couple that I skipped over. I think that my favorite line in the movie is when Thomas Jane gets like a bunch of like random soldiers show up out of nowhere, and they all say like halt, 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 and he's like on the ground with his hands up, and they're just screaming halt at him. He's like, I'm pretty much halted as much as I can. Like I can't halt anymore than I already been halted. But let's go into some final thoughts, I suppose.
Love it.
Let's start with Kaylin. Kaylin, final thoughts on the movie Dreamcatcher, starring all your favorite childhood friends.
It's true, so true. All of that and everything else. I enjoyed it. I definitely was expecting something different, which is just inappropriate of me to do in the first place. It felt like it was trying to be a few different things. Which I don't know, like in the moment, like thinking back, like it's again, like getting to talk about all these different things was enjoyable. And also some of the points, some of the different perspectives that you were mentioning about, oh, maybe this was like meant this or whatever kind of thing, made me like it a little bit more for sure. It felt like it just took a huge left turn towards the end. But I did enjoy it. There were some laughs. There were definitely some like tense moments or whatever. I give it what do I give it? I give it an exploding butt monster out of
almost getting your dick bitten off by an exploding butt monster.
Perfect. That's perfect. That's exactly what I give it.
Okay. I don't know if it was ever fully. He didn't, right? Timothy Olyphant saved his business.
He looks down and goes,
so I don't
know.
I think he burnt it a little.
Yeah, he had to like hump the logs.
He definitely fucked that fire.
Yeah. All right, Jason. Final thoughts on the movie Dreamcatcher. Dreamcatcher.
I loved the Dreamcast when it came out in 1997. It was a great console. You could play games like Power Crystal or whatever on it, and
Jet Set Radio.
Yeah. And Marvel versus Capcom. I like this movie. I liked talking about this movie with you guys. I think this movie, like I've said during the probably last week and the John Carpenter month, this encapsulates the spirit of hey, did you see this one in spades? Yeah. This is one of the best like hey, did you see this one movies we've done because it's so on brand for my vision along with Kaylin. I think he can probably agree for what I always envisioned this podcast to be. There's lots to talk about. There's like sometimes you'll watch a movie, Needful Things not so much, where you get bored I wanted to bring up Needful Things because for a second I thought maybe that's one of those, but no, I want to see what happens next. And this isn't necessarily I want to see what happens next, but the story, the composition of the story, even though it's wacky and it's sci-fi and it's action and it's horror and it's all these weird genres mixed together, it makes sense as a movie. I wish it was 2003 and this was brand new and I was my age that I am now, and I could go see this in theaters as a new concept. I wish that I had gotten into movies this way when theaters were still a thing that I went to all the time, because I now want to go see weird movies in theaters. And I feel like I missed it on that opportunity, at least for another probably year or two, before I truly feel comfortable going to see movies in theaters because of the pandemic. And this has actually inspired me to watch more just like weird pseudo horror movies that are recommended to me. When somebody's like, hey, did you see this one? I'm gonna be like, yeah, I have a podcast called that. Maybe I'll go watch it. But my point is I really enjoyed this thing. I think this was a good choice, and I wish that I had watched it last week, because if I had, in my like COVID stupor that I was in, I probably would have rewatched it and gotten more out of it. But I was incapacitated. I couldn't. You can still kind of hear it on my voice, but solid 3. I think you didn't think of solid 3. It does have a lot of problems. It is kind of whack. It is kind of, the dialogue at times is like, what the fuck? Who? Somebody had to write this down on paper and then get multiple people to read it and be like, yep, put that in a movie that goes in theaters. Also, it's a film, because there's no real car chase and there's no explosion as far as I can
forget
remember.
about your rules.
My criteria, but that's good because films are better than movies.
There's a snowmobile chase or whatever. There's kind of a car chase.
Kinda.
There's explosions. They blow up the spaceship.
I mean, Jonesy crashes almost every vehicle known to mankind.
Okay, let me back it up. I forgot about the fact that Morgan Freeman comes in guns ablazing, and
chase.
Tom Sizemore. Okay, never mind. I take it back. I forgot about all that.
It's a movie.
It's a movie. Not a film. Not a film. There's no mumblecore between Jason Lee and a love interest, so it's definitely not a film. Which would have been the kind of movie that Jason Lee would have been in at the time, and he kind of dies before all the action starts. So
yeah, I think you're absolutely right. It is a movie, and it has some of the best movie moments ever, including a man playing a mumbly high school or university professor versus an imperial commander from the Star Wars series.
I see.
Hello there, Jones. Yeah.
I see why you have a connection to this movie, because you're going to see when we watch Stay Tuned, which I brought up last week. You're going to see why I have a weird, like, it's not a good movie, but it's a weird fucking relic of my past that you guys are going to be like, oh, okay, you may or may not. This isn't one where I'm going to be like, you're definitely going to love it, like I did with Team America. Like, you're definitely going to go back. I wasn't
even sure that I was going to love this movie. Like, I brought this up because, like I said, a lot of the visual elements of this movie stuck with me for a long time, to the point that when I was making the list for this month, I was like, Dreamcatcher is one that I remember seeing, and I remember enjoying it in theaters, and I never really watched it again. And it, like, there's just these images that stuck in my brain for my whole life for some reason.
What's the first image that pops?
Weirdly enough, the end of the movie when Duddits like turns into that weird sort of kangaroo looking other alien.
Mm-hmm.
Were
they not the same species or whatever? Like, he just didn't like what they were doing or something? Or
I think they were supposed to be the same species. I'm pretty sure they were supposed to be the same species. Yeah. Like, they didn't look that different, but I don't know.
I just want to interject. This movie has a 28% on Rotten Tomatoes and a 35% on Metacritic, but it has a 5.5 out of 10 on IMDb. So, like,
it's all over the place.
It's really all over the place. Like, it's not high by any stretch, but it's there has to be people that enjoy it for it to have, you know what I mean? So I think it's I watched 81% liked this film of Google users. 6 people could have voted, right? But
someone could have put a 1 and someone could have put a 100. You never know.
Yeah.
And the thing is like, I watched this with a group of friends a couple of months ago. not out of preparation, but it was in when I was kind of vetting my list of movies, and I was like, I don't. This movie might be absolutely terrible, but I remember liking it as like a 14-year-old, and so we watched it, and throughout the movie we were ragging on it, we were laughing and we were making fun of it, and we were like, oh my god, rolling our eyes. But by the end of the movie, we all were like, that was bad, but it was like we all didn't there was not a point where we were like, let's turn this off. Like we all wanted to keep watching it.
I was watching it going, this is objectively bad, but I cannot, and it's not even like a train wreck, like a car crash situation. It's that it's just it's palatable. I like sci-fi, I like horror, I like dumb dialogue, I like these actors. That's enough for me. I'm not going to sit here and be
it's like the equivalent.
I'm not going to give it a 4 out of 5. You know, I'm not going to be like, this movie fucking rules. I'm going to be like, I'm going to give people an apprehensive watch this if you're into this sort of thing. And if you love Stephen King, definitely watch this movie because it feels like a Stephen King thing.
Yeah. When I posted this on Instagram, or like shared the post that we were doing this, I got a couple of messages from people that I haven't spoken to in a long time.
Oh,
being like, why the fuck are you doing this movie? And like, you know, I was like, it's kind of the point of the show is like we sometimes pick movies that like not something that you would necessarily want to discuss, and you pick it specifically so that you can see if you can discuss it. And I think that we proved the point that like even movies that are not universally loved or even respected, we can still find some stuff to talk about.
And movies you would expect to have a lot to talk about, like my Trey Parker and Matt Stone experiment, like there wasn't a lot to talk about after you got through a couple of the movies because it's just the kind of a broken record.
So I guess I didn't really get to my final thoughts. I did kind of wiggle some of them in there while we were talking, but I think at the end of the day, this movie is something that I won't recommend to you to watch by yourself really ever, but this is something that you can sit down with a group of friends and have some drinks or whatever, and you don't need to really worry about being completely silent throughout the movie because the movie overly broadcasts what's happening the entire time. You're never really confused. You might be confused about how their powers work, but luckily there's like 4 different scenes where they go back to them as kids that explain how their powers work. So you're just like, yeah, it's fine. The performances are all good. There's no bad performance in this movie that pulls me out of it to the point that I'm like, oh, this person's acting, except for, I would argue, the kids do feel very actory. Like all their dialogue is like, it's just as cheesy as the adults, but it's comes off with like an extra layer of mustard on it because you're like, oh god, these child actors are acting too hard at me. And like I've said throughout, it's enjoyable. Like it's enjoyable enough that it keeps your attention and it keeps you invested to the point that you kind of want to get to the end, even if somebody already told you what happens at the end. You're like, but I want to see what's up with this dog, and like, does Jonesy defeat Mr. Gray in his own mind warehouse? Like, I want to know what's going on with all the little elements. And there are so many elements in it that are mixed up, like all the crazy shit from the book is in the movie, that you can at least attach to one of those things. If you like the interaction between Morgan Freeman and his general, if you like the interaction between Mr. Gray and Jones, if you like Thomas Jane's adventures through the woods, like there are so many little things that you can latch onto that you're probably going to like at least one of those threads, and they go back and forth between them with such rapid succession that as soon as you start to get bored of one scene, it goes back to one of the other characters and you're able to like, oh yeah, I'm back to the person that I care about at this point. So yeah, I'm not gonna recommend this movie to anybody that has no interest in this genre or any of these actors or even Stephen King. If you don't like any of those things, then stay the fuck out of here. This movie's not for you. But if you have any interest in any of those things, then you'll probably like it in some capacity. You might give it a 3, you might give it a 4, you might give it a 5, but I am going to give it a burning Dreamcatcher on fire to erase all of Stephen King's appropriation of indigenous culture from all of his projects.
I love it.
20 minutes, 38 seconds.
Yeah. Give it a half a moldy Dreamcatcher out of a please stop appropriating indigenous culture as a spooky ghost.
Yeah. I think that he's tried to stop doing that, but his works in Stephen King, or sorry, his works in Doctor Sleep, he kind of like went to the well, and he decided to like maybe dig a new well. He's like, oh, I don't want to go back to this well. I'll dig a different well next to this well.
This casino is over top of a white people burial ground.
A normal burial ground. Oh, God. I'm kidding.
COVID.
So yeah, I guess that brings us to the end of our second episode of Stevens, which is the month in which we watch all Stephen King adaptations.
Stephen King.
It's like that TV show Even Stevens, but more Stevens and less Evens.
Yeah.
We try to
I hope you guys had at least a little bit of enjoyment out of this movie. I had more than I thought I was going to, considering it's been so long since I've seen it. But
I wish I got to watch it with a group of friends.
Yeah, well, we should do a watch party one time. We can do it.
Yeah, we have the setup, and like honestly, we could be watching, like there's stuff that we could just be watching together on Twitch that we're not gonna get zapped for because nobody fucking cares. Like we could watch old, for instance, commercials for old commercial. We could watch movie trailers and react to them. Like maybe on Tuesday night we do a tight hour of watch a couple trailers and talk about it. We can broadcast that all to Twitch, like the fact that we have the Zoom to Twitch thing. I'm going to get my own Zoom account, so soon we're not going to be tied to Steve's friend's account.
Right. Yeah. I had my incorrect name up for the majority of this episode. All right. Well, I think that brings us to the end of the episode of Dreamcatcher. So I'm going to end the Instagram. So let me just go ahead and look Instagram directly in the eye and say, for Jason and for Kaylin, I'm Steven.
For Kaylin and for Steven, I'm Jason.
And for Jason and Steven, I'm Kellen.
Hey, did y'all see this one?
Hey, did you see this one?
Hey, did you see this one?
Hey, did you see this one?